Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will meet British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in Downing Street ahead of the high-stakes Trump-Putin summit in Alaska tomorrow. President Donald Trump has warned that President Vladimir Putin has only one chance and threatened severe consequences if Russia fails to halt its offensive. The Israeli military announced that it has approved a new offensive framework for Gaza City, with Army Chief Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir endorsing the plan amid escalating airstrikes that Gaza officials say killed at least 75 people in just one day. Hamas has condemned the aggressive incursions, warning of a scorched earth policy. India and China are in talks to resume border trade after a 5-year hiatus. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi will visit India next week for high-level talks with National Security Advisor Ajit Doval on border issues, ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's trip to Tianjin for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. Talks on a UN landmark global treaty to combat plastic pollution fell into disarray as dozens of countries rejected the latest draft. According to media reports, environmental NGOs also slammed the text, warning it fails to address the urgency of this crisis. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister Kim Yo-jong has dismissed South Korea's peace overtures as a pipe dream, insisting that Pyongyang never removed its propaganda loudspeakers and will not do so. She also condemned US-South Korea joint military drills as a futile motive that failed to hide the allies' hostile intent. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Washington looks forward to cooperating with Pakistan on critical minerals and hydrocarbons. According to a State Department statement on Pakistan's Independence Day, this comes after both countries celebrated a trade deal last month that Pakistan said will lower tariffs and boost investment, reported Reuters. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has signed into law a controversial amnesty bill granting legal immunity to military police and self-defense groups for crimes committed during the 1980 to 2000 conflict against the Shining Path and Tupac Amaru guerrillas, which left 70,000 people dead. The law criticized by the United Nations and the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. A drone attack struck the Sudanese town of Tambul, southeast of Khartoum, killing 2 people, including a child. According to medical source, the strike underscores escalating violence in Sudan's ongoing conflict. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer will host Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in London today. His office has confirmed this comes just a day before a high-stakes summit between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. Zelensky is expected to arrive at Downing Street at 9:30 a.m. local time, following Starmer's remarks on Wednesday that there is now a viable chance for a ceasefire in Ukraine. This meeting is seen as part of last-minute diplomatic efforts to align positions among Ukraine's allies ahead of Friday's talks between Washington and Moscow. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, what does this...
Thank you, Sim.
Thank you. Now, what does this timing suggest? What role can UK play now in UK and Zelensky's talk mean now?
Well, the key thing to remember is that the Prime Minister of the UK, Keir Starmer, has always talked about having a united front within Europe supporting Zelensky. Zelensky's been over here a number of times, so it's bringing those countries together, France and Germany leaders and Starmer. So he is then leading this. He had a conference here a number of weeks ago to talk about what the European countries would do in regard to continuing to support Zelensky this war that has gone on for far too long, with much destruction and loss of lives since the Russian invasion in February 2022. So that's what is happening and playing out here before the very, very important meeting that President Trump is having with Putin in Alaska at the American base there, Azuma.
And Mark, now, how important or what role does UK in particular play in terms of these upcoming talks?
Again, some people could cynically say that it's political theatre. For some, it's to divert attention away from some of the domestic policies that are going on. We could cynically say that. However, this is a very, very important issue because we all want this war to end. Why this war started, the ins and outs of that are a discussion for about 6 hours. But it is about Starmer is trying to lead the way to say we have a unified here of the willing. Also, there is a muted discussion. Are these countries, the UK, France, Germany, are they going to show some kind of force once there is a ceasefire, once there is a negotiated lasting peace? Will there be some kind of united force there to make a statement to Russia that please do not, you will not do this again, you will not expand, you will not invade again, or start any other future wars, because we are here to back Ukraine along with America to make sure that that doesn't happen. Those thoughts are out there already before this meeting on Friday.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on. According to reports, Hamas has told Egyptian mediators it is ready to withdraw its forces from Gaza if Israel pulls out troops to agreed locations. Sources say the Hamas delegation in Cairo handed over proposals for a ceasefire deal, demanding a written agreement with international guarantees that Israel would drop occupation plans and not resume hostilities. Hamas also reiterated its commitment to preserving the lives of hostages. Egypt is working on a roadmap for a comprehensive agreement by late August. Egyptian media reports the Hamas team met intelligence chief Hassan Rashid to discuss a 60-day truce plan. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Yossi Cooper-Rosser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, can you tell us, can you tell us how significant is Hamas's proposal for a ceasefire, or does it make any difference at this moment? And what does it reveal about the current dynamics on the ground?
Well, if it is true, and it has to be verified because there's no verification as of now that this was said by Hamas, but if Hamas is ready to disarm and withdraw from the Gaza Strip, this is a major development, and this is exactly what we were trying to accomplish. And let's see if this is going to happen. I didn't see any mentioning of the hostages. I hope that this goes along also with releasing the hostages. This is going to be the new position adopted by Hamas. It's good news, and we can move forward. What we learn from that is that until they feel that Israel is really determined to forcefully remove them from power, they were reluctant to do any of the above, any of the moves that we were expecting, like disarming themselves and so on and so forth. So it means that this decision of the government to move forward towards removing them from power by force had its outcome relatively rapidly. I hope that this is really the case. There's a lot of misinformation and disinformation going on, so it's hard to know if this is true. If it's true, it's a breakthrough. If it's not, we shall have to continue our military preparations for removing them from power by force.
And Yossi, if this is true, given the demand for international guarantees by Hamas, so how likely is that this ceasefire could be successfully implemented? Is there a chance?
if it's true and they are going to disarm and they are going to leave Gaza, then no problem. We are looking forward to having international involvement and inter-Arab involvement, the Egyptian plan of what will happen in Gaza after Hamas is leaving. After Hamas leaves, then it's a deal, it's a program that can work. It's something that is to the liking of Israel. We don't want to rule over Gaza. We want the Gazans to rule over themselves with international and inter-Arab support. That's what we're looking for. And yes, we shall have to continue because we are suspicious. We're suspecting that they are not going to do it properly, so we shall have to keep an eye on what's going to happen there and keep the capability to intervene if something happens. But if it's going to go in the right direction, there's no need for us to intervene. We shall just keep control of the perimeter surrounding Gaza and making sure that no arms are smuggled in. And that's what is going to happen. I have to say that simultaneously to all of that, we saw a lot of information coming in about huge arms smuggling to Hamas through the aid convoys. So it's hard to say what is the real picture. The rumors coming out of Cairo or the situation on the ground when you see the pictures of the trucks loaded with weapons and reaching the Hamas in Gaza City.
Thank you, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, for always joining us and sharing your insight from Israel. Now we move on to our next news. To North America, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has taken steps to revoke or restrict visas for some African, Caribbean, and Brazilian officials who Washington alleges have ties to a Cuban program that sends medical workers overseas. According to reports, the State Department has revoked the visas of Brazilian Ministry of Health official Mozart Julio Tabosa Sales and former Pan American Health Organization official Alberto Kleiman. Rubio reportedly has not named other officials who were affected, but said they were from Africa, Cuba, and Grenada, and were quote-unquote complicit in the Cuba's forced labor export scheme. This comes as the Cuban government has blasted U.S. efforts to stop the medical missions, reportedly calling them a cynical excuse to go after its foreign currency earnings. Caribbean leaders have also previously rejected U.S. accusations of Cuban labor exploitation. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator. Thank you, Mark, for staying with us. Now, how do you view this U.S.'s decision to revoke visas for officials tied to Cuba's medical programs? And do you think this is legitimate, what they are saying as the reason?
The concerns are about basically as you said, the exploitation about slavery. So let's just slavery in regard to these medical workers. So what would happen is that the doctors would go abroad to the countries that you have then talked about. They would then go abroad, and the concern would be that their wages would then be kept by the Cuban authorities, and that they may not receive the fullness of that wages, or they receive part, even though particular area of Caribbean deny that and say that they receive the fullness of their wages. So that is a concern. The other thing that we also have to remember that Marco Rubio's family, they come from Cuba in the mid-50s. They then came from Cuba over to Florida. So they would then, understandably, he would, quite rightly, along with many other people in that area down to Miami, would have then personal stories to tell to then back all that up over time. So this is the reason. The reason is to turn around and say, when you've got the economy of Cuba, you're wondering about how you are then going to get money into the country. That is then one way to then do a stimmer, which is to take, the accusation is of taking that money from the people that are working in the medical field direct back to governmental authorities.
And Mark, with Cuba calling the U.S. actions an attack on its foreign currency earnings. How do you interpret the broader economic and political implications for Cuba's standing?
Well, the key is this: is under the Biden administration, many things that also actually under Obama in regard to relationships with Cuba, then are being loosened. Remember, it's the ideology. We are looking at communism, and socialist ideologies. So that, understandably, is how America then views that. So this is them turning around and ramping up because it also contributes. They are concerned about the way that these people are used. They are using that term in regard to from a slavery point of view. The other thing is that their families, etc., could be threatened back in Cuba if they do not go along with this. These are the other parts of this discussion around this whole subject, Asuma. So yes, diplomatically, it always leads to an interesting discussion, but the American authorities are very firm about this, and through historically, then we turn around and say this is why we're doing it. We don't have time even to go into the Cuban Missile Crisis as a way of saying historically what has gone on for a long time. Sima.
Thank you very much, Mark, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on to our next news. Defense lawyers for former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro have asked the country's Supreme Court to acquit him of coup plotting charges. In closing arguments, his legal team submitted a 197-page document claiming an absolute lack of evidence and insisting he is innocent. Bolsonaro and 7 allies are accused of trying to hold on to power after his 2022 election defeat to current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. The case centers on January 8, 2023, when thousands of his supporters stormed government buildings in Brasilia, alleging fraud and urging military intervention. Bolsonaro, who calls any coup abhorrent, faces up to 40 years in prison if convicted. He's currently under house arrest for violating a social media ban. Now for this discussion, we go back to our guest, Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator. Thank you, Mark, for staying with us. Now, given this political climate in Brazil, how might this trial influence the public perception of Bolsonaro and Lula da Silva's current government?
Sima, the big issue here, and the concerns of all people in Brazil, and particularly with under Bolsonaro, was the concern, as it was happening in America in the presidential election of 2020, is how people then count the votes. As Stalin once said, it's not who votes, it's who counts the votes that's important. And the concern is when you are then using an electronic means in which to do that, it then raises a lot of questions. And also how you then empower social media and all the rest. But as in America, and Brazil's constitution is based on America after then coming out of military dictatorship, as in America, they have been constantly concerned about the use of electronic means to vote. And this is then concerned within Brazil as well. Many people, understandably around the world, would like to say, right, you have a paper ballot, you count that on that particular day. That these systems can be abused, and the concern is on any political side that they are then abused. The reason why, in my own understanding of why this court case has gone on and on, is because, understandably, if you are then voting for Bolsonaro, you were then concerned at how that election result came about. So you raised those concerns because those concerns have been building up well before the actual election 2022 in regard to there needs to be firmer, stronger security on the electronic means. And of course, this is reflecting that has gone on within America for many years, and people understandably around the world question that, because paper ballot on that day is the most important way, the most secure way then to actually vote. Now, how this plays out, you can always use the court to then go against your political enemy, and fraud has to be stamped out. But if you are then looking at political enemy, you are then questioning them in the past in regard to their links with the Brazilian oil industry. Did politicians in Brazil in the past take kickbacks and all of this kind of thing? These, even though people may think that these are not irrelevant, these are irrelevant. It is actually about, can you trust your election? Can you then trust the people that you have then voted for? This is a huge question, of course, in Brazil, and this is a huge question that is then going around the world constantly in regard to many elections in many countries. Basuma.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Mark Sutherland, for always joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. Pakistan will create a new army rocket force to supervise missile combat capabilities in conventional conflicts, a move seen as targeting rival India. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif announced the force at a ceremony in Islamabad, marking the worst conflict with India in decades this May. He said the unit will be equipped with modern technology and will strengthen the Army's combat capabilities. A senior security official has said it will have its own command to handle and deploy missiles in wartime, adding it is obviously meant for India. Tensions spiked earlier this year after an attack in Indian Kashmir, leading to weeks of missile, drone, and airstrikes before a ceasefire brokered by the US was announced. So for this discussion, we are joined by retired Major General G.G. Dwivedi. He's a defense analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Major General, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now,
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, given Pakistan's decision to establish a new army rocket force, how does India view this deployment or development in terms of its own defense strategy and its security?
Azuma, first and foremost, we understand that today we are in the era of aerial warfare, which is largely orchestrated through the missiles, through the drones, and of course, through the air power. And we witnessed that in May, from 7 to 10 May, when Operation Sindoor was orchestrated between India and Pakistan. And extensive use of missile was used during this short conflict, I would say. Now, coming to the command and control and the new organization that Pakistan is creating, which have been announced only today, we need to understand 2-3 basic fundamentals. First and foremost, Pakistan has a reasonable arsenal of missiles in its kitty, which are both tactical, even medium range, and the long range like Shaheen was used by Pakistan lately. And therefore, there is a need for command and control of these missiles. But right now, I think they are being used directly under the army headquarters of Pakistan. But now they are trying to create a new organization which will exclusively handle the missile warfare or the missile deployment, and of course is holding. India, as it is, has a strategic force which handles the and deployment of the missiles, which we already have. And this will not have major impact because as it is, Pakistan is using these missiles, have used the missile. The only thing that they will have a command and control, and as it is, Pakistan is the army which governs the defense policy, even the foreign policy. As it is, this arsenal was under the army, and therefore it is only, I think, organizational structure that they are trying to create, but which will not have major impact as far as India is concerned. Asuma.
G.G. Dwivedi, what steps can India take to ensure that this move does not escalate tensions further?
Well, the point is that first and foremost, it's the army in Pakistan which controls its policy, as I stated, and they are the ones actually who orchestrate or who execute the defense policy. And of late, you would see that Field Marshal Asim Munir has gained even further importance in the organizational structure of Pakistan. He is the person who has been feted by President Trump over the luncheon, and he has just been on second visit to America. So therefore, we need to be concerned about these personalities which actually control Pakistan, either organizational structure or their defense deployment and defense structures. So therefore, I think India need to be watch out, and most so when statements are made on the nuclear, the way they lately Asim Munir had said that in case the country faces existential threat, then Pakistan will bring down half the world. And he even went on to state that in case India constructs dams on Indus, they'll shoot it down with missiles. So the point is we need to take this very seriously because after all, it's the army in Pakistan which runs the show. And when they make such statement, they cannot be ignored. They have to take cognizance of. All I can say is that India must cater for these threats that are developing, especially the kind of interaction or kind of alliances with China, which actually is equipping Pakistan army today, and also the Turkey angle. So we need to be prepared and keep a very close watch as to what the developments are taking place in Pakistan and how the restructuring be done. I think India has no choice but to keep a close watch and also keep taking steps as the situation unfolds. Suma.
Thank you very much, Major General Gigi Dwivedi, for joining us and sharing your insight. Now we move on to Europe. Wildfires sparked by arsonists or thunderstorms and fanned by a heat wave and strong winds have wreaked destruction across southern Europe, burning homes and forcing thousands of residents and tourists to flee. Nearly 440,000 hectares have been affected so far this year, double the average for the same period since 2006, according to the EU Science Hub's Joint Research Center. In Greece, flames and dark smoke swept through olive groves, forests, and a cement factory near the city of Patras, disrupting the rail traffic. Authorities ordered evacuations in a town of 7,700 people and issued alerts for 2 nearby villages, while on the islands of Chios and Cephalonia, people were also told to move to safety. In Spain, a volunteer firefighter has passed away from severe burns while creating fire breaks near Nogorijas. He was the 6th person to die in Spanish wildfires this year. Additionally, firefighters and locals responded to wildfires in Portugal after strong gusts of wind rekindled flames overnight and threatened nearby villages. Firefighters also worked to extinguish a wildfire not far from the capital of Montenegro, in Montenegro's mountainous area northeast of the capital, Podgorica. One army soldier was killed and another badly injured when a water tanker they were operating overturned. The Balkans region has been hit by a series of wildfires following weeks of high temperatures and very little rain, with strong winds fanning the flames. Let's listen into what some residents from across Europe had to say.
Φοβόμαστε γιατί είναι νύχτα και τα αεροπλάνα δεν θα προλάβουν να σβήσουν τη φωτιά.
Δυστυχώς τα μέτωπα είναι τόσο πολλά που έχουν εξαπλωθεί τόσο πολύ που τα επίγεια μέσα είναι διάσπαρτα, οπότε δεν μπορούν να επικεντρωθούν σε ένα συγκεκριμένο σημείο για να αντιμετωπίσουν.
Estamos apagando lo que las cuadrillas no pueden apagar o no tienen tiempo a apagar porque hay bastantes focos.
La verdad que el viento no está ayudando demasiado, lo está poniendo mucho en contra. Los equipos de extinción, tanto carrocetas como bulldozers, Charlies y tal, se le está haciendo muy complicado a la hora de intentar extinguir el fuego, porque como tienen ciertos puntos de ciertos pueblos, se le está haciendo más complicado.
This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.